Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Six Path Weeb, and today we continue the story with part 3 of What If Naruko returned as Madara's ultimate trump card? In the last part, we saw how the balance of the war began to shift the moment Naruko re-entered the battlefield, not as a hero, but as a calculated weapon in Madara's endgame. Alliances were shaken, old assumptions were shattered, and the shinobi world realized that Madara was still several steps ahead. In this part, the consequences hit harder. Madara makes his move, the battlefield changes once again, and Naruko's true role in this war starts to unfold in a way no one saw coming. As always, this video is purely for entertainment and discussion. I do not own any anime footage used here. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. With that said, let's get into it. Madara gently slid the lacquered case across the low table and nudged it toward Naruko. Inside was not a weapon, but a beautifully preserved heirloom scroll, its edges decorated with careful fan patterns painted in soft ink. "It is a gift," Madara said calmly. "My brother Izuna would have wanted you to have it." Naruko scrunched her eyebrows, her lips pressing into a thin line. Madara always spoke in circles, and she was running out of patience. He exhaled, then smiled faintly. "After all, you are my granddaughter." The words landed like falling snow in Naruko's mind. Everything went quiet. Her thoughts stalled, then slowly restarted. Naruko said, brilliantly. Madara let out a small amused sound. "As I said, you are my granddaughter. Your parent was my child." He raised a hand before Naruko could react. "I did not know before now. I only realized it during the Takegoka assignment. You will learn more in time, but not yet." Naruko slumped slightly, disappointed but trusting. Madara's voice carried certainty, not avoidance. She straightened again, pointing toward a sealed folder resting nearby. "That folder earlier. You would not explain it at the Hokage Tower." Madara turned and walked to the far wall, beside a tall stone tablet carved with old symbols. He pressed his palm flat against the wall and murmured softly. A quiet click followed, and a hidden compartment opened. From within, he carefully removed a long scroll and placed it on the tatami floor. It was simple and unassuming, yet clearly treasured. He unrolled it slowly. Names flowed across the page in elegant writing. Naruko knelt beside him, eyes wide. "What is it?" "A family record," Madara replied. "Every member of our clan is written here, generation by generation. It reaches back far beyond the founding of the villages." He pointed to a section where the names ended, leaving clean white space beyond. "This is my line," he said. "The main branch. It stopped here, because history believed I had no descendants." Naruko's gaze lingered on a name written with special care. Uchiwa Izuna. Uchiha Izuna. "Izuna," she said quietly. "You once called Sasuke that name." Madara nodded. His eyes shimmered, and the room seemed to soften around them. A gentle illusion formed, like a memory painted with light. A young man appeared, calm and kind, his hair tied back neatly. He smiled warmly at Madara, then at Naruko, and gave a small wave before fading away like mist in sunlight. Naruko stared, awestruck. That was incredible. "An illusion," Madara said. "A peaceful one. A way to share memories." Naruko's face lit up. "I want to learn that someday." Madara chuckled. "With patience and focus, you will." He reached for an ink set and prepared it with steady hands. When ready, he leaned over the scroll, paused briefly, then wrote. A single line extended from his name. Uchiwa Madara. Uchiha Madara. Uchiwa Uzumaki Naruko. Uchiha Uzumaki Naruko. Naruko froze, eyes shining. Madara smiled, pride clear in his expression. "The folder you saw earlier." He tapped the scroll lightly. Adoption papers. A new path for Naruko. The evening gathering of Jonin was unusually calm. Instead of loud chatter, the group sat together sharing warm tea and gentle laughter. These weekly meetings were less about reports and more about encouragement, stories of teamwork, lessons learned, and small victories worth celebrating. Anko leaned back in her chair, smiling proudly. "My student has been doing wonderfully," she said. Naruko handled a difficult mission by thinking clearly and protecting everyone involved. That kind of responsibility doesn't come easily. Several Jonin nodded in approval. Kakashi closed his book and added, "She's learning faster than most. Not just techniques, but judgment." Hashirama chuckled warmly. "She asks thoughtful questions too. That curiosity will take her far." The conversation drifted naturally to the future, training paths, upcoming exams, and how important it was for young ninja to feel supported rather than pressured. When the topic turned to Madara, the room grew curious. "He's taken Naruko under his wing," Kakashi said calmly. "Officially. He's chosen to be her guardian." The room went quiet, then softened. "That explains it," Anko said gently. "She's been calmer lately. More confident." Walking together. Later that day, sunlight filtered through the trees as Naruko walked beside Madara along a quiet shrine path. She carried her practice sword carefully, still getting used to its balance. "So," she said after a moment, smiling shyly, "what should I call you?" Madara considered this. "You may call me Otosan, if you wish." Her eyes lit up. "Okay. Otosan." They continued walking, comfortable in the silence. Madara glanced at her gear. "How does your training outfit feel?" Naruko tapped the protective vest thoughtfully. "It's sturdy, but I think I move better when I'm lighter. I want to be fast and adaptable." "A wise observation," he said with approval. "We'll adjust it." At his home, Madara helped her remove only the outer armor pieces, leaving her fully dressed at all times. He handed her a new outfit designed for flexibility: long sleeves, a high collar, and breathable protective mesh worn over clothing, suitable for training and travel. Naruko tried it on and moved around, testing her balance. "This feels right," she said happily. "I can move freely." Madara nodded. Strength is not only about power. It's about understanding yourself. Naruko stood a little taller at those words. For the first time, she felt certain she wasn't walking her path alone, and that made all the difference. It was easy for Naruko to put the outfit on, especially compared to the complicated metal armor she had worn before. The mesh underlayer slipped on like everyday clothes, though her toes occasionally caught in the tiny, evenly spaced gaps of the weave. She kept the sturdy pants from her heavier gear and carefully rewrapped the bandages around her shins, making sure they were snug but comfortable. The shirt was simple and well made, with a nearly invisible seam down the front. It opened and closed like a kimono, yet once fastened, it looked just like an ordinary top. Naruko straightened the sleeves, noticing how the wide cuffs draped over her hands. She liked how they made her feel calm and focused, as if they were designed to encourage careful movement. "So?" Madara asked from the doorway. Naruko turned as he handed her a harness meant for carrying a training sword. She slipped it on with care. The strap allowed the wooden blade to rest diagonally across her back, the tip reaching just past her hip. She smiled brightly. "It feels really nice not to wear the armor for a while." She glanced at the neatly stacked metal pieces resting quietly in the corner. "I don't know how you wear it all the time." Madara gave a soft, amused chuckle. "I've worn armor like that since I was young. After a while, it becomes familiar." They sat together in silence, listening to birds and the gentle rustle of leaves outside. The quiet felt peaceful, and neither of them rushed to fill it. After a moment, Naruko spoke up. "Hey, Otosan. I noticed Sasuke has the Uchiha fan symbol on his clothes. Why don't I?" Madara blinked, surprised, then smiled thoughtfully. "To wear the crest, one must fully master a certain technique." Naruko tilted her head. "But I already know it. I've practiced it many times." "You know the steps," Madara replied kindly, "but mastery means control, balance, and care. Come. Let's practice by the river." He stood and stretched, his armor making a soft clinking sound as he moved, then walked out the back door with quiet confidence. Naruko hurried after him, slipping on her sandals as she went. They soon reached a calm river with a small wooden pier extending over the water. It wasn't grand, but it felt like a good place to learn. Madara stood at the end of the pier, arms crossed, gazing thoughtfully across the river. Naruko joined him and waited patiently. She practiced the hand movements she had learned, running through them again and again, focusing on smoothness rather than speed. Madara watched carefully. "Good," he said at last. "Now remember, control matters more than size." Naruko nodded. She gathered her energy slowly, carefully, just as she had been taught. When she released it, a small, warm flicker of light formed in front of her hands before fading gently into the air. Madara smiled with approval. "That's it. You're learning." Naruko beamed. She practiced every day, resting when reminded, eating well, and listening closely to advice. Sasuke joined in too, offering tips and encouragement. Over time, Naruko's control improved, her confidence growing along with her patience. After several days, her technique was steady and balanced. Madara nodded proudly as he handed her a new shirt, the Uchiha fan stitched neatly on the back. You've earned it, he said. Naruko stood a little taller, smiling as Sasuke gave her a rare look of approval. Together, they walked toward the gate, ready to greet the world beyond with calm hearts and steady steps, knowing that learning was a journey best shared. And through it all, there was one rule that always remained: their training, their lives, and their story were guided by respect, care, and the promise that there was no harm, no cruelty, and no nudity anywhere, only growth, kindness, and hope. Sasuke gathered all the courage he could find and shouted toward the great wooden gates. Go away. We don't want you here. Silence followed. It stretched so long that everyone began to glance around uneasily. Did he really leave? Sasuke whispered. Madara folded his arms. No, he said calmly. The Hashirama I know would never give up that easily. He is probably waiting for the exact wrong moment to surprise us. Naruko nodded, though her shoulders stayed tense. Can he get inside? She asked softly, her eyes fixed on the gates. Sasuke answered this time, steadier than before. No. The seals won't allow it unless the gates are opened. They're strong, but they need regular care. Madara nodded. So we wait. They did not wait long. Hello. A cheerful voice called out from below them. Everyone jumped back in surprise as Hashirama's head popped up from the ground, smiling as if nothing unusual had happened. Hashirama brushed dirt from his clothes and looked at Sasuke kindly. You might want to reinforce the seals under the east side of the compound. There's a weak spot underground. Sasuke nodded quickly, half amazed and half nervous. Hashirama then turned toward Madara, his smile warm but serious. Mada-chan, he said gently, you adopted Naruko without telling me. Big decisions work better when we talk about them together. Madara swallowed and raised his hands. I was going to explain. Hashirama thought for a moment, then brightened. I know. Let's work together and invite Tobirama back for a visit. Not permanently, just as a peaceful spirit, using Naruko's improved summoning technique. Madara sighed. Naruko did the same. This sounds complicated, Naruko said, though she smiled a little. Later, they stood in a quiet forest clearing filled with sunlight and soft wind. Hashirama carefully laid out a large scroll covered in friendly-looking symbols. It's safe, he promised. This version is about learning and teamwork. Naruko took a deep breath. Okay. I'm ready. She formed the hand sign slowly and carefully, focusing on calm thoughts and steady breathing. A gentle glow spread across the ground, warm and golden. Light gathered like drifting leaves, and soon a familiar figure appeared, smiling thoughtfully. Tobirama looked around, surprised but peaceful. Brother, he said, you always find interesting ways to call family meetings. Hashirama laughed. You're just in time to help us teach Naruko more about seals. Tobirama noticed Naruko standing protectively near Madara. He smiled. So this must be Naruko. You have a strong heart. Naruko felt nervous, but also proud. She lifted her hands as soft, glowing ribbons of energy flowed outward, not to trap or harm, but to form a protective circle around everyone. They're for safety, she said. I wanted to make something that protects without hurting anyone. Tobirama nodded approvingly. That is real strength. Madara placed a hand on Naruko's shoulder. Hashirama beamed. The clearing felt peaceful, filled with trust, learning, and quiet happiness. And Naruko knew she was growing, not just stronger, but kinder too. The dark ribbons appeared in a blink, flowing like soft shadows made of silk. They wrapped gently but firmly around Tobirama's arms and legs, anchoring him safely to the ground. He knelt more from surprise than force, steady and unharmed. Tobirama looked up, startled, then astonished. Standing before him was Naruko. She wore a neat training outfit with the Uchiha crest stitched carefully at the shoulder. Her bright hair caught the light like sunlight through leaves, and her eyes held a calm focus far beyond her years. From her hands, the dark ribbons shimmered, not sharp or frightening, but protective, like guardians answering her call. Tobirama's eyes widened as he took her in. Those eyes. They carried a rare pattern, turning slowly like stars in motion. Not angry. Not cruel. Just determined. Naruko spoke softly, her voice steady and sincere. You will not hurt my family. There was no threat in her words, only certainty. And Tobirama believed her. Behind her, Hashirama stared in awe at the glowing ribbons, while Madara watched Naruko with an expression only Tobirama noticed. Pride was there, unmistakable. Deep care, too. And something fierce, not possession, but protectiveness, like a guardian watching over a precious flame. When Madara met Tobirama's gaze, he gave a small, knowing smile. A silent message passed between them. She chose this strength herself. Madara spoke gently. Naruko, that's enough. At once, the ribbons loosened and drifted back into her hands, dissolving like mist. Naruko looked down at her palms, blinking in surprise. Oh, she murmured. They listen really well. Hashirama laughed warmly. Why don't we all head home? We can talk somewhere comfortable. After a moment's pause, Naruko nodded. You can come with us, she said kindly. Our home isn't fancy, but it's warm. As they walked together, Naruko trailed behind, glancing at her hands again. Curious, she stumbled on a root, and before she could fall, the ribbon sprang out instinctively, catching her and gently setting her upright. Her eyes sparkled. That was amazing. At the compound, Madara rested a hand on her shoulder. Go practice with Sasuke, he said. Focus on balance and movement. Yes. Naruko beamed, dashing off toward the training yard, her laughter bright in the evening air. The home itself was quiet and peaceful, filled with sunlight and simple comforts. Inside, the adults sat together with warm tea, the room calm despite their complicated history. Tobirama broke the silence at last. Madara. Naruko means a great deal to you. Madara nodded. She is my granddaughter. I raise her as my daughter. Hashirama smiled softly. And she's doing wonderfully. Tobirama considered this. She's learning kindness alongside strength. That matters. Madara's expression softened. That's her choice. I only guide her. They sat in thoughtful quiet for a moment. Outside, Naruko practiced her steps with Sasuke, laughing when she missed and trying again without giving up. Tobirama watched through the window and spoke quietly. Perhaps, he said, the next generation will build something better than we did. Madara didn't answer right away, but this time, he didn't disagree. And somewhere in the yard, dark ribbons shimmered briefly in the sunset. Not as weapons, but as bonds. It took 3 days, 7 hours, 26 minutes, and 9 seconds for Tobirama to form his opinion of Uchiha Uzumaki Naruko. The girl was unusual. Not in a bad way. Just unexpected. A delightful puzzle that refused to fit neatly into any box Tobirama had prepared. Uchiha children, according to every history scroll and lived experience, were meant to be quiet, serious, and intensely focused. They spoke little, observed much, and carried their thoughts like carefully guarded treasures. Naruko did none of that. Ha ha ha. I got you that time, Oto-san. She darted across the training field, her laughter bright and clear, sunlight caught in motion. Hashirama followed after her with exaggerated effort, clearly enjoying the chase more than winning it. Wait for me, Naruko. He called cheerfully. Tobirama pinched the bridge of his nose. Uchiha were not supposed to laugh like that. They were not supposed to joke, tease, or invent games in the middle of practice. Yet here Naruko was, doing all of it without hesitation, as if joy were the most natural thing in the world. Still, Tobirama noticed that she did have some Uchiha traits. She crossed her arms when thinking, used short replies when concentrating, and occasionally offered a thoughtful HN. When something made sense to her. But the Uzumaki side of her seemed to soften everything. Where intensity might have taken root, curiosity bloomed instead. Where pride might have hardened, kindness grew. The result was energetic. Very energetic. Come on, Hashi-sensei. Naruko called. You said you wanted to get faster. Hashirama laughed and obliged, running alongside her with ease. Tobirama glanced to the side, where Sasuke trained quietly. Sasuke was exactly what Tobirama expected. Focused. Reserved. Serious. It was reassuring. Then Tobirama looked back at Naruko and sighed. Madara, once known for his stern presence and dramatic seriousness, now stood nearby with his hair temporarily turned bright orange thanks to Naruko's enthusiastic experimenting with harmless training techniques. Hashirama tried very hard not to laugh. Naruko failed entirely. It actually suits you, she said, smiling widely. Madara covered his face with his hands, clearly embarrassed but not truly upset. The three of them soon collapsed onto the grass, gazing up at the drifting clouds. Laughter softened into comfortable quiet. Team 11 was different. But not in a troubling way. Later, as Tobirama stood thinking, a familiar presence appeared beside him. Tobirama-san? He turned to find Naruko looking up at him, her expression thoughtful. "Why do you always look so serious?" she asked gently. "You don't have to answer if you don't want to." Tobirama paused, surprised by the kindness in her tone. "That is simply who I am," he said at last. Naruko nodded, accepting it without judgment. "HN." She smiled, then stepped back. With a cheerful wave, she leapt away, vanishing into a swirl of leaves as gracefully as a falling petal. Tobirama watched her go. Perhaps the world had not changed for the worse after all. Perhaps it had simply grown brighter. Tobirama stood quietly behind a sturdy tree, his eyes closed as he listened to Hashirama guide a young student through her training. "Once more, Naruko. Keep trying," Hashirama encouraged warmly. There was a short pause, broken only by the sound of steady breathing as Naruko gathered her focus in the clearing. "Yes, sensei," she replied, slightly out of breath but determined. Tobirama could hear her quick footsteps as she moved forward, followed by the gentle clack of wooden practice swords tapping together. Hashirama believed in teaching through experience, allowing students to learn by doing and reflecting afterward. It was a method built on patience, effort, and trust. Naruko had grown remarkably under this guidance. The training suited her curiosity and hands-on learning style far better than rigid classroom lessons. Tobirama found himself wondering what kind of shinobi she would become. Like Hashirama, he sensed a quiet strength within her, one that bloomed when given the right support. As Tobirama focused again, he noticed a careful flow of chakra nearby. Binding bloom. Softly chiming chains of chakra-shaped energy emerged from the ground, looping forward in a graceful arc. Hashirama stepped aside easily, smiling. "Well done, Naruko," he said. "Thinking creatively is important. Always look for new ideas." Naruko nodded brightly and tried again, moving with growing confidence. Later that day, Tobirama noticed Naruko seated at the kitchen table in Madara's house. Her tongue peeked out slightly as she concentrated, carefully sketching symbols onto parchment. Beside her lay a small notebook filled with notes and thoughtful revisions. Tobirama stepped closer and sat quietly, observing without interrupting. Naruko didn't notice him until he spoke gently. "If you extend this line just a little," Tobirama said, pointing, "and add a small swirl here, it will create a harmless smoke signal instead of a loud reaction." Naruko jumped in surprise, then stared at the diagram. Her eyes sparkled as she made the changes. A short while later, she returned with a proud smile. "Tobirama-san, it worked." He nodded approvingly. "Good. Come sit. I'll help you understand why." Naruko hurried back, sitting up straight. "Why does it work like that?" "Because chakra responds to intention," Tobirama explained. "Those with strong reserves, like us, must learn balance." Naruko beamed. "Like us?" "Yes," he replied calmly. "Like us." Back at the training field, Hashirama clapped his hands together cheerfully. "Show me what you've learned, Naruko." Naruko took a steady breath and focused. Gentle glowing lines formed in the air before her, shaping into a glowing tag. "Up here, lingering mist marker," she said clearly. With a soft flash, a cloud of dark but harmless mist drifted across the field, cool and light like morning fog. Hashirama laughed softly, impressed as he waved his hand through it. "Well done," he said. "You're learning to think ahead." Naruko stepped carefully, listening and sensing through the mist. When it cleared, she stood smiling, proud of herself. Hashirama offered her a hand to help her up. "Excellent work. You're growing every day." Madara approached, surveying the field thoughtfully. "I'll admit, I'm impressed." Tobirama folded his arms. "Her progress comes from patience and guidance." Madara nodded once, then looked at Naruko. "Keep learning. Your path is just beginning." As the sun dipped lower, Tobirama turned away with a quiet thought. It is never too late to guide someone toward a brighter future. Naruko stood in the open training field, her long blonde hair tied neatly behind her as she held a wide ceremonial fan with both hands. She took a deep breath, steadying herself the way her teacher had shown her. "Gentle wind fan," she said clearly. A soft but powerful breeze spread across the field, lifting leaves into the air like dancing ribbons. Madara stepped back a few paces, shielding his eyes as the leaves fluttered harmlessly around him. When the wind settled, he lowered his arms and nodded with approval. "Well done," he said calmly. "Your focus is improving." Naruko smiled, gripping the fan again with determination. She wasn't trying to push anyone back or show strength for its own sake. She wanted control, balance, and confidence. Madara moved so quietly that Naruko barely noticed him step aside. She turned her head, alert but calm, remembering her lessons. Again, he said, reappearing where he had been before. Naruko nodded and tried once more. This time, the breeze was steadier, smoother, and more precise. Madara landed lightly after stepping back, brushing a bit of dust from his sleeve. Better, he said. Practice brings clarity. We will move on to elemental studies later. Naruko carefully folded the fan and sealed it away, proud of herself. Just then, Hashirama appeared, smiling brightly. Did you know, he said cheerfully, that today is Madara's birthday? Naruko's eyes widened. It is? She exclaimed. I didn't know. Hashirama leaned in and whispered an idea, glancing around playfully as if sharing a secret. Later that afternoon, Naruko approached Madara with a small tray she held carefully in both hands. Happy birthday, Oto-san, she said warmly. Madara looked surprised, then gently pleased. On the tray were neatly made rice pockets, prepared with care. Thank you, Naruko, he said softly, accepting the tray. After tasting one, his expression brightened even more. You made these? Naruko nodded shyly. I wanted to make something special. Madara smiled, truly and openly. I appreciate this very much. She then handed him a neatly wrapped scroll and quickly stepped back, her cheeks warm with excitement. Madara opened it carefully, reading with great interest. His eyes widened, not with shock, but with admiration. The next morning. Good morning. Hashirama called brightly. It's a celebration day. Madara groaned softly. It's very early. Naruko shuffled in, yawning. What's happening? Presents, Hashirama declared. Soon, gifts were exchanged. Naruko received a framed team picture, soft plush dolls, and a beautiful sealing kit with books to help her learn more. She thanked everyone with genuine joy. When Madara handed her a carefully prepared scroll, Naruko read it quietly. Her eyes shone as she rolled it back up and hugged him gently. Thank you, she whispered. Madara rested a hand on her shoulder, smiling. Across the room, Hashirama chuckled to himself. It had been a day full of kindness, surprises, and laughter, and that made it a perfect one. A new path for Naruko. The academy building stood tall ahead of the three young shinobi, sunlight glimmering across the damp stone and turning small puddles into mirrors. The air felt crisp and full of promise. Came a quiet response. Oh, come on, Naruko said brightly, clasping her hands behind her head. This is the Chunin exams. A big step forward. We should be excited. No one answered. Naruko tilted her head, her smile softening. You've both been so serious lately. Did something happen? Madara paused, then let out a long breath. I suppose I've been putting too much pressure on myself, he admitted. This exam matters to me. Hashirama nodded kindly. And that's okay. What matters most is that we do our best, together. Naruko grinned. That's the spirit. Let's show everyone what teamwork looks like. With renewed focus, the trio entered the building, passing through the halls with steady steps. When they reached the upper floor, a familiar group stood nearby, Team 7. Sasuke stepped forward, calm and composed. Sakura and Sai stood beside him, attentive and respectful. I'd like to suggest a truce, Sasuke said evenly. During the exam, we look out for each other instead of competing. Naruko considered this, then smiled. That sounds fair. Cooperation makes everyone stronger. The two teams exchanged nods, a quiet understanding forming between them. Moments later, they stood before the exam room doors. Naruko placed her hands on the handles and took a deep breath. All right, she said cheerfully. Time to begin. She opened the doors, and the room filled with curious faces. Some students looked surprised, others intrigued, but the atmosphere was calm and expectant. Naruko stepped forward confidently, her expression warm and determined. Hi everyone, she said. Let's all do our best today. The room seemed brighter somehow, as if her optimism had lifted the mood. Author's note. Thank you to everyone who enjoys this story and supports creative storytelling. Your encouragement makes a real difference and inspires more positive tales like this one. This story follows a strict rule: there is no nudity anywhere in the content, ever. It is written to be safe, respectful, and enjoyable for all ages. Wishing you kindness, creativity, and a wonderful day. The moment the announcement settled into the room, There was a pause so quiet that it felt like everyone had forgotten how to breathe. Then came the whispers. Small murmurs fluttered through the crowd like startled birds. Fingers pointed, heads leaned together, and surprised expressions bounced from one face to another. A few candidates exchanged worried looks with their teammates. Others laughed nervously, unsure whether this was serious or some kind of test. The noise grew bit by bit, rising like a wave until it finally crested into complete chaos. Some candidates decided right away that this was not for them. They headed for the exit with determined steps, glancing back as if daring anyone to stop them. A few teammates followed, not wanting to be left behind. Before long, a noticeable portion of the room had cleared. Those who remained watched with wide eyes. Team 11 exchanged looks of amazement. The confidence of the people still standing was impressive, especially considering the legendary instructors overseeing the exam. Madara stepped forward, his presence calm but commanding. The room seemed to quiet on its own, as if everyone instinctively knew to pay attention. Even without raising his voice, he carried an air of seriousness that made people stand straighter. Hashirama gently placed a hand on Madara's shoulder and chuckled. All right. No need to scare anyone. We want everyone to do their best, right? Madara gave a small, thoughtful nod. True. Only those who are ready should continue. Nearby, Naruko listened closely. She crossed her arms and smiled with confidence, clearly agreeing. She was focused, determined, and more excited than nervous. Hashirama noticed her expression and sighed dramatically. Oh dear. I'm surrounded by very intense people today. Naruko lightly tapped him on the head, grinning. Come on, sensei. This is an important exam. Believe in us. Hashirama rubbed his head and laughed. You used to be much softer about things. Naruko shrugged and stepped beside Madara, standing tall and proud. Madara gave her an approving look, clearly pleased with her growth. Hashirama turned and hurried over to Team 7. Sasuke. Sakura. Sai. Help. They're being so serious. He leaned against Sai with exaggerated sadness. Sasuke quietly edged away, pretending to inspect the floor. Sakura followed, though she stayed close enough to listen. Sai gently patted Hashirama on the head and calmly pulled out a small book. According to this guide, he said, reading carefully, strong teams may disagree, but cooperation always returns. Hashirama blinked. Really? Sai nodded. The chances are very high. Hashirama clapped happily. Well, that's wonderful news. He dashed back to Madara and Naruko, throwing his arms around them with cheerful energy. We're going to do amazing in this exam. Naruko laughed and gently pushed his arm away. Amazing in a good way, right? Hashirama paused, thinking hard, then smiled brightly. Of course. The best way. Naruko and Madara shared amused smiles. Hashirama clapped his hands and gestured toward the remaining candidates. All right everyone. Let's begin. Welcome. Naruko stepped forward with confidence, her eyes bright with excitement. Whatever came next, she was ready to grow, learn, and give it her all, together with her team. Morino Ibiki, head of the Intelligence and Analysis Department, wasn't sure whether to feel proud or mildly annoyed that someone had managed to inspire such serious focus among the Chunin exam applicants. From behind a carefully maintained disguise technique, Ibiki observed the exam hall. The technique itself was simple, often overlooked, yet extremely effective when used with patience. From his hidden vantage point, he watched as a few highly experienced shinobi, along with some especially confident younger ones, stood out among the crowd. Their calm presence alone had encouraged many nervous candidates to straighten their posture and take the exam more seriously. Ibiki considered that a success. He extended one hand without looking away. Coffee. A mug appeared immediately. He took a sip, the warmth settling comfortably as he allowed himself a rare, small smile. Several nearby staff members blinked in surprise. Ibiki almost never smiled. He finished the mug and held out his hand again. Another. This time it took a little longer, but a second mug arrived. Ibiki tasted it thoughtfully. Who prepared this? One brave Chunin raised a hand. I did, sir. Ibiki nodded once. Excellent focus and consistency. From today on, you'll assist me during exam operations. Attention to detail matters. The Chunin exhaled in relief and stepped back, earning encouraging pats on the shoulder from friends. Ibiki took another sip. Clear thinking and good coffee, he said quietly. A fine combination. Sir, someone whispered, it's already afternoon. Ibiki waved dismissively. Timing is flexible when preparation is thorough. From his place behind the disguise, he watched as the legendary first Hokage somehow managed to appear both cheerful and intimidating at the same time, despite clearly enjoying himself. Life, Ibiki decided, was balanced rather well. Hello there. Hashirama greeted the room with a bright grin. The response he received was cautious but polite. Hashirama draped an arm around Kiba on one side and Shikamaru on the other. So, how's everyone feeling? The teams exchanged glances. After a few subtle nudges, Ino stepped forward. We're doing well, Hashirama. Hashirama laughed. I've told you, just Hashirama is fine. No need for titles. They make things sound too serious. Some seriousness is helpful, Madara said calmly. Hashirama pointed at him with mock offense. Oh, let me enjoy this moment. A soft laugh came from behind him. Naruko Uzumaki, bright-eyed and energetic, gently nudged Hashirama forward. He stumbled slightly before catching himself. Hey, Hashirama said, laughing as he turned. Naruko, you're supposed to be setting a good example. Naruko grinned, hands behind her head. I am. I'm showing that it's okay to relax sometimes. Hashirama sighed dramatically, then smiled. As he did, he noticed a quiet, silver-haired shinobi approaching Team 7. Sasuke stiffened, clearly uncomfortable. I don't need assistance, Sasuke said firmly. Naruko stepped beside him, her expression calm but supportive. Everything okay here? The man paused, then nodded and stepped away, realizing his help wasn't needed. Sasuke glanced at Naruko. Thanks. She smiled. That's what teammates are for. Nearby, a kunoichi from another village spoke confidently about her team's training and goals. Though her words were competitive, they were not cruel. Naruko listened, then spoke up with a friendly but steady tone. Everyone here has worked hard to get this far. That alone deserves respect. The room quieted slightly. A bespectacled shinobi flipped through his information cards. Kurotsuchi, he explained to those listening. She's talented, experienced, and known for her creativity and training exercises. A strong competitor. Naruko nodded thoughtfully. Good. That means we'll learn something new. Sasuke crossed his arms, a small smile forming. I wouldn't want it any other way. Before more conversation could spark, a large puff of smoke appeared at the front of the room. Ibiki stepped forward, his presence commanding attention without raising his voice. Settle down, he said. The first written portion of the Chunin exam will begin shortly. Please submit your applications and take your assigned seats. The room quickly filled with movement and quiet determination. Naruko took her seat, posture straight, eyes bright with focus. This wasn't about fear. It was about growth. Naruko ground her teeth nervously as she stared at the nearly blank piece of paper on her desk. Tests made her uneasy, especially written ones. She much preferred learning by doing. Half an hour had already passed since the exam began, and she had only answered a few questions. The rest felt like puzzles with missing pieces. Naruko glanced left and right, but she did not recognize anyone nearby. Far ahead, she spotted Hashirama sitting calmly, while she guessed Madara was somewhere behind her. With a quiet sigh, Naruko rested her forehead on the desk for a moment, then lifted her head and focused again. She narrowed her eyes, trying her best to concentrate. She believed in herself, even when things were hard. As she focused, she felt a gentle ripple of energy, like a quiet nudge reminding her to stay calm. Words slowly appeared on the paper, neat and clear, guiding her thoughts. Naruko smiled softly, understanding that teamwork and trust could appear in unexpected ways. Carefully, she copied the answers in her own handwriting, making sure she understood each one. When she finished, the guiding words faded, leaving behind only her work. Naruko leaned back in her chair, feeling relieved and proud that she had not given up. Soon, the proctor clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. Time's up. Now we move on to the final part, he announced. His voice was serious, but not unkind. Before we continue, there is one important rule. The room grew quiet as everyone listened closely. You may choose whether or not to continue, the proctor explained. If you leave now, you may try again another time. If you stay, you show confidence in yourself and your team. Some students looked unsure. A few stood up, apologizing to their teammates before quietly leaving. Naruko watched them go, feeling a little sad, but she respected their choice. Everyone had to follow their own path. At last, the proctor smiled. Well done to those who remained, he said. You have all passed the first exam. The room filled with surprised gasps and happy chatter. Naruko blinked, then grinned widely. What about the last question? Someone asked in confusion. That choice was the real test, the proctor replied. This exam was about courage, trust, and gathering information calmly under pressure. Naruko nodded. She liked that answer. It felt fair. After the excitement settled, another adult entered the room with an easygoing wave. Hello everyone, he said cheerfully. My name is Nara Shikaku. I'll be guiding you through the next challenge. Nice to meet you. Naruko straightened in her seat, excitement bubbling inside her. She knew the journey ahead would not be easy, but she was ready to learn, grow, and face it with a smile. And no matter what came next, she promised herself one thing: she would keep believing in who she was becoming. Naruko, Hashirama, and Madara walked calmly beneath the tall trees, sunlight drifting down like soft ribbons through the leaves. The Forest of Death had a dramatic name, but today it felt more like a quiet nature trail, full of gentle sounds and hidden wonders. Hashirama paused every few steps, placing a hand against tree trunks as if greeting old friends. Some of the branches seemed to sway in response, as though happy to see him. Madara followed with a thoughtful expression, eyes observant but relaxed. Naruko walked beside them, hands behind her head, enjoying the peaceful moment. She felt proud of how far she had come and quietly promised herself to stay alert while keeping a kind heart. After some time, two of Naruko's shadow clones hopped down from the trees, each offering her a scroll with a cheerful nod before vanishing in a puff of smoke. Hashirama, Naruko called warmly. We gathered both scrolls. Hashirama turned with a bright smile. Wonderful. Shall we head toward the tower together? Naruko nodded eagerly, stepping onto a sturdy branch and moving forward with practiced ease. Madara followed, then suddenly raised a hand. Wait, he said calmly. He knelt and touched the ground, closing his eyes as if listening to a quiet story the earth wanted to tell. Then he stood and pointed east. Someone passed through here earlier. Let's take a look. Curious but unafraid, Naruko and Hashirama followed. They moved lightly, leaving no trace behind, until Madara stopped near a tree marked with gentle scorch patterns that looked more like warm embers than damage. This feels familiar, Madara said. A friend was here. And someone else. Unusual, but not dangerous. Hashirama studied the tree and smiled thoughtfully. Perhaps they needed guidance. Naruko stepped forward. Then let's help, if we can. A soft voice answered from nearby. That would be appreciated. A pale man stepped into view, his expression calm and curious rather than threatening. He bowed politely. I am Orochimaru, he said kindly. A traveler who studies nature and learning. I seem to have startled a few students earlier without meaning to. Naruko met his gaze without fear. It's nice to meet you. I'm Naruko Uzumaki. Everyone deserves a chance to explain themselves. Orochimaru smiled, clearly surprised by her warmth. You have a good heart. To lighten the mood, Naruko clapped her hands together and formed a graceful seal. A gentle stream of water appeared beneath her feet, flowing like a shining ribbon. She balanced easily, gliding forward with a laugh that echoed through the trees. Hashirama chuckled and shaped the wood beside him into a smooth, flying platform, while Madara watched with an amused smirk. Shoei, Madara said, though his eyes sparkled with approval. The four of them shared the moment, standing together beneath the forest canopy, reminded that strength did not come from conflict, but from understanding, cooperation, and choosing kindness even when things felt uncertain. And throughout it all, the forest remained peaceful, safe, and welcoming, just as it should be. Dear YouTube family. That's all for now. If this video brought you value, show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing for more content like this. Your support keeps the journey going. Until next time. Regards. 6 Path Weeb.